Hello and welcome to the second of these videos looking at the anatomy of a composer, delving into the harmonic language of certain works. And it was great after the last one that there was so much feedback and debate, and it was perhaps inevitable, having looked at the music of César Franck and Debussy, that the name of Wagner would rear its head. And I thought it might be interesting in this video to look at a facet of Wagner's music, in fact, just a chord, or as it's become known, the chord, the Tristan chord. So what is it? Well, if I play the start of the Prelude to Tristan, we hear it in the second bar. In fact, he likes it so much that he repeats upper minor thirds. So if we just take the chord in its first incarnation that we heard it there, what is it? It's an F, we've got an F, a B natural, and as he notates it in his score, a D sharp and a G sharp. Now, if we change the enharmonic spellings of those top two notes, so, and you'll see why in a second, to E flat and A flat. If I take the A flat down an octave, we've got a chord built in thirds, minor and major thirds. And in fact, if I took out this middle note, that itself is just an F minor 7 chord. Now normally a straight F minor 7 would, its fifth would be natural. And there's a simple cadence, a 2-5-1 sequence, F minor, B flat 7, E flat. Now with this flattened fifth, it can act in the same way. In fact, there, it's a sort of darker cadence, and of course Western music's littered with terminology, so we have to give it a name, and rather than calling it the Tristan chord, well, any jazz musician would just call that a half diminished chord. There's our diminished, all built up in minor thirds, but only half of it is diminished, or it's an F minor 7 with a flattened fifth. As I said, that just acts a very functional way, but does Wagner treat it in this way that, as I say, it's sort of bread and butter to any jazz musician? Well, on the face of it, no, because he resolves there, which doesn't seem to have much to do with our cadence. But actually, the thing that's so beguiling about this chord is its versatility. And if we look at where Wagner takes us, that chord, if I take this top note down an octave, like I did in the other with the Tristan chord, we've got a straight E7, E dominant 7 chord. Now, again, you might be saying, well, what's that got to do with an E flat minor chord? Well, if I look at the third and seventh of this chord, we've got a G sharp and a D. Again, if I change the spelling, we can call it an A flat and a D. That is also the third and seventh flipped, the seventh and third of a B flat 7, which is our chord 5 in our cadence in E flat minor. So actually, it's very closely related, and Wagner could have, if he'd chosen to, gone to E flat minor. He could also, and this is the beauty, and this is why it's so ambiguous, because of the E7 could also be a straight dominant 7th in the key of A minor. He could also have written, kept going up with the melody to A minor. but of course he chooses to let it just hang there, and then we get it. He could keep going. Fortunately, he stops it there. Anyway, is there any precedent to this and the function the way he resolves it? Well, in fact, yes. If we look at a piece written only 7 or 8 years before this, Schumann's cello concerto, it's right at the beginning of the piece. If I just play the opening, speed it up a little bit. I know it's sacrilege. Not even just similar, but exactly the same voicing, and it goes to an E chord, not E7. That's the one difference, just a straight E major, because of course Schumann then goes on. But there it is. So it definitely wasn't invented by Wagner. We can say that. But how did composers after Wagner take it on board and assimilate it into their own music? Well, if we look at two very different musical centres, Vienna and Paris, fast forward 30 or 40 so years. We'll start with Paris first of all, soon as we were looking at the music of Franck and Debussy. And a real masterpiece, which is Fauré's opera Pénélope, hugely neglected, and in fact where all the late chamber music comes from. And right at the beginning of his own prelude to the opera, there is this sequence. There it is, exactly the same key as well. But where does he go? He goes here. I should have played the start. The prelude revolves around these two major chords that are separated by a major third. And he uses the so-called Tristan chord, a half diminished chord here, and resolves. We think we're going into C minor, in fact, but what he does. Instead of B flat to D in the beginning, we've now got G. It's his own, uniquely Fauré. And then, in fact, the next phrase, we've got another half diminished, and he resolves it in the same way. Absolutely extraordinary. So that's another way, and actually it's very interesting because these two chords that he uses, well, in fact, where he goes with this G7, I could actually put the G on that chord, and it acts as a dominant 7th chord with a flat 9 and a flat 13, but that's for another talk. What about Vienna? Well, again, this is another piece I was obsessed with when I was young. The Opus 1 of album Berg, the very first phrase has a wonderful example of it. Straight up. There it is. And he's using it, the very first example I gave of this cadence, he's using it in that way, that it's a 2-5-1. We're finishing in B minor, so this. But what he does in the middle of that is this fantastic sequence. He does actually, I should say, he misses out the minor third. It's even more ambiguous, but its function is the same. You can hear there's a 2-5-1. It's still there. So that's another example. And I thought to finish, as hopefully might have shown that this chord is not the sole, under the sole ownership or patent of Wagner. it's in jazz music. It's bread and butter, because every time you have a 2-5-1 in a minor key, you can use this half diminished chord. So I thought I'd see if I could use Wagner's treatment of it and superimpose that onto a jazz standard. And the first one that came to mind was What Is This Thing Called Love? And it's a piece that starts with two cadences that use half diminished chords. If I just play the standards. So there we've got the Tristan chord and another one. So what would happen if could we resolve them in the way that Wagner does, but still keep the bass line and the harmony of What Is This Thing Called Love? So we could change the title to What Is This Thing Called Tristan? So works. And there we go. So I hope that's been of some interest. Do keep the comments coming, and look forward to seeing what people have to say.